It continues to be a perfect road trip for the Leafs as Stoli the goalie gets a win in his return. We'll discuss that and more here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Your Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast, your daily Maple Leafs-centric podcast. Thank you for joining me. David Morassutti here with my buddy Austin Owens. Mike could not make it for recording today. He's going to be on overdrive, so he's got to go from Niagara to Scarborough.
A big deal.
So yeah, that's got a little bit of a change in plans for him. Kind of found out last minute, so he had to quickly make a bit of a detour on that, and I had an appointment this morning, so I couldn't get to recording, and I just wasn't able to. We were not in a position to record after the game last night. Ended close to like 12:45.
They just did crisp 1:30.
Yeah, so that would have been like a 1:30 recording time. Just would not have done anybody any good to hear what we had to say at that point. But we are here. Want to thank you guys all for hopping on the Locked On Leafs podcast. If this is your first listen, thank you guys for making us your first listen of the day. If it's not, well, I appreciate you guys for coming around and listen to what we are going to talk about, and that is a Leafs victory over the Seattle Kraken, which, hate to say it, was kind of one of the I don't know. I think out of the games on the road, the least exciting one. Not that a win's exciting, I know that, but I mean, probably not the most entertaining game, in my opinion. Now, I will say today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. And maybe some of you use Gametime to get some tickets in Seattle because there was a good Leafs contingent. But maybe that's why. Maybe I got so caught up in the last two games where it was almost a Leafs takeover in the crowd.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really complain about, the fans coming out and supporting the team. It's always good in every building. Like, you get a good contingent of Go Leafs, Go chants everywhere they go. But it's been nice, it's cool to see when you go to, a Seattle, like they're going to be going to Utah at some point. Like, it's cool to see kind of these new venues where I remember when they went to Arizona, it was a takeover there in that small, Mullet Arena they were playing in. Like, it's just very cool to see the turnout for Leaf fans, and they're getting their money's worth with a couple wins on this trip. They
definitely are. If you went and watched the game in Seattle, good on you. I think there was still some good amount of Leaf fans there, but like this was more, I think, of what we were expecting to see from the Leafs. Like, this reminded me a lot of like the early on Leafs, like early season Leafs when Anthony Stolarz was in net, kind of just tidy I wouldn't say it was the most tidy defensive play. I think Anthony Stolarz had to do quite a bit of work last night, but it just felt to me that this was a more controlled win for the Leafs against Seattle. At no point in that game was I worried that Seattle was going to take over.
Yeah, I think, the Flames game wasn't really ever in doubt either, but, there was kind of a set where they scored that. God, I feel like it's 3 years ago right now. This week's been long with all the late games, but they score that goal late, and then Joel Farabee scores like 20 seconds later, and it's like, you worry about kind of the old habits creeping in. I think this game was, it felt very much in the bag once the Leafs had that 3-goal lead. They had one goal, Ellie Tolvanen scored that, beautiful shot, but it's the assurance, obviously with Stolarz back, you're not really worried about whether or not he's going to, cave in certain moments. Obviously, Joseph Woll's been really good throughout the course of the season and covering him when Stolarz has been gone, but just that assurance, we've been talking about it all year with the two goalies, that they're going to make a big save when you need it, has been amazing for the Leafs. And I think that's really helped them find confidence defensively and just, be able to pull out these games where in, previous years, it's been a bit of a fire drill towards the end of the game.
Yeah. I mean, like the thing is Seattle had their chances on net.
Oh, yeah.
And the Leafs, I think what really set them apart in this game was the goaltending. Goaltending won, and just they capitalized on their chances. Like, this is where I was when we were talking about coming into this game. I felt like Seattle doesn't have the talent level of the Leafs, and it showed in this game. Like, there were opportunities for Seattle in this game. They just couldn't bury them. I felt that, yes, Stolarz made some really excellent saves. The one on Montour, that was just unreal. But he was, especially in the second period where I felt like, they were getting some good high danger chances, but like the Leafs responded too. So I think that was nice to see. And also another game where the power play scores. I don't think it looked as good last night as we've seen the last couple of games. But yet again, they took advantage of an extra long power play there. You have Bob McMahon once again scoring on that right in front of the net. I will say a good night for the penalty kill, because that was something that had been like the power play was going up and the penalty kill was kind of dwindling a bit. So it was nice to see that the penalty kill was on its A game. But yeah, the power play, once again, they get the opportunity, they get the goal. So it's nice to see that it's continuing to strike with their opportunities.
Yeah, I think that's been the nicest thing about this whole, the whole season in general. Obviously, there was the big storyline of the power play not getting it done to start the year. They've really corrected it in the middle portion of the year, but obviously, a lot of people talk about the question mark being post-trade deadline. It kind of cools off into the playoffs. So that'll be the next kind of goal, is to keep this consistency going, because there's no doubt that they have the guys to do it. They've paid the guys to be in a position to succeed. And it's been, very interesting seeing this, 5 forward unit. I like Nyes up top. I like Tavares. I think he missed, a really tough one last night. He should have had a goal that hit the post. But even that, the power play the penalty kill, I think, has been fantastic all year long under Lane Lambert. That's been a very consistent thing. And, they've needed it, because at times it's been some really tough penalties and tough situations. So I think just special teams in general, that's one of the keys to just winning hockey, is, capitalizing on your power play opportunities and minimizing the opportunities or the goals that you give up on the other end when you do take a dumb penalty.
No, exactly. You're going to expect, the other team to push back. Seattle did push throughout the game. It just felt like the Leafs were in control though from kind of the start of the game. We'll go through our 3 stars of the game, highlighting some of the players who impressed us. We will also go over the last stop of the road trip, which is in Vancouver, with a chance to get a little bit of revenge. And finally, we have another player being added to the trade board. Should the Leafs be in the market for not one, but maybe 2 Schenns? We'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Looking for tickets to your next big event, whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sports game, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache. With Gametime Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Gametime Picks, the app does all the work for you. It curates the best deals, so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. You can use it if you're going to the game on Saturday in Vancouver and you're looking to get some tickets. Go and use the Gametime Picks. The curated deals make it simple to find great tickets at a great price, no matter where you're sitting through, and you don't have to sift through thousands of options. You can go and look at the seat view to see where you will be actually sitting when you're going to the game before even you hit buy. You can see exactly where you're seating in the venue. It's so reassuring. And the best part, you're covered with Gametime's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund you 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back here to the Locked On Leafs podcast. David Morassutti. Joining me today is Austin Owens. Mike had to get some overdrive prep done today, so Austin has once again, as always, gladly filling in for Mike. And as Austin has done a few times with us here, and as those of you maybe who are first listening to the show, we are going to be doing our 3 stars of the game after every Leafs win. We do the 3 stars, and Austin, you are the guest. I will let you give first dibs on who you had as your first star.
Am I the e-bug of the podcast at this point?
E-bug, yeah,
I'm
probably.
the David Ayers of this podcast. So sorry for the deep cut.
Hey, David Ayers won that game, so it's not necessarily
We
a
don't
bad
talk
thing.
about that anymore, David. Sorry, that was my fault. I brought up bad memories. Goaltending, Anthony Stolarz. I feel like it's got to be the first star. I don't know. In that situation, I think you give him a little bit of leniency to, have some growing pains coming back. He was outstanding from start to finish. That shot, I know we talked about it in our little group chat. We have some friends. It was an absolute missile by Tolvanen. Like, I don't know many goalies in the world that are stopping that from that position. That was mid to high slot. He ripped that thing. Other than that, staring down Montour, giving him a little wink at the end. He had the sauce. He had that confidence to him, and confidence is, a big part of the game with goaltending. And he just made the big saves when he needed to and bailed his team out when they needed him.
Yeah, I think also Stolarz got some good luck his way too, with a couple of posts or a couple of shots that looked like they're going to go in, but they went wide. But you know what? In order to be good, you got to be lucky sometimes. But I think it was also more than just luck for Stolarz. I thought, he was pretty calm in the net, made those, the athleticism and size made it easy for him to make some of those extra saves. Seattle did have an edge in high danger chances at 5-on-5. I mean, 6-5, it wasn't a massive, but they had their chances at 5-on-5 in this game. Obviously, I think the big one here is obviously the power play on the penalty kill. I thought Stolarz did a great job of minimizing the damage on those ones, because the Leafs once again were, in my opinion, were a little too willing to go to the penalty box in this one. A little undisciplined once again. But Stolarz did a great job in kind of limiting the damage there. And yeah, the save on Montour, obviously,
so good.
One that just
I feel like when a guy has that much time to just step in and take a wrist shot, it's like, okay, that thing's either going bar down or 5-hole. Like, the players are too good that he's not just going to ping that one straight in. And Stolarz just stared him down, gave him a little bit of the windmill action as well. It's just, that's a goalie that's got a lot of confidence, and just, that was unbelievable. I love having Anthony Stolarz back. Like, that duo gives you so much confidence that you can win any game you're in.
I look at this also when you consider Stolarz, the goal that beat him was an absolute rocket. Like, no goalie is stopping that. And I think that's probably where the Leafs got a little too complacent, is they allowed those types of goals. I mean, those types of opportunities where Tolvanen was just allowed to just walk in uncontested, pick his spot. The expected goals against in that game were 3.39, and they only scored 1 goal. So usually a pretty good night for your goaltender when he's keeping you in the game like that. And that's something like Joseph Woll did a great job as the number 1 with Stolarz out. But you see the benefit now of this 1-2 punch that Stolarz and Woll have. Question for you: do you think Stolarz should get the next game in Vancouver, or do you think they continue a sort of rotation here?
Oh, I mean, this is the last game before the break for Four Nations, correct?
Yeah, the final game before the Four Nations. So
I feel like you don't push it. You give Stolarz the night off and you go back to Woll. Like, you give him 2 weeks off after coming back from an injury. Even, it was nice to see him back, but I know there were probably questions of why didn't you keep him out past the break just to give him that extra time, more runway. But I think Woll's not playing badly enough where you have to force a guy that's just coming off an injury to play back-to-back. I don't think you go with a guy that's carried you this far since he's been out.
Yeah, I think your best bet right now is to, I mean, I don't think you go wrong with either guy. I think it's Stolarz, if you feel like you just want to get him in a bit of a good spot before the break here, wouldn't be a bad idea. And considering Vancouver's an interesting team right now, we'll get into them more here on the podcast. But maybe we'll go into our second star of the game. Who stood out to you out of everybody else?
Oh, man. I don't know that. I mean, Bobby McMann is the one that comes to mind immediately. I think
he was my second star. So
yeah, he's just continued to be steady. I think more importantly, he just does the right things. He's, a little hit or miss in the defensive zone, but I think that's, 90% of forwards in the NHL. You can probably say that about. Like, there aren't a lot of, shut down two-way players, and they're being paid a lot of money. So I think what he's being asked to do in the lineup, he plays up and down. He can play in the top six. He can play in the bottom six if you ask him. He's proven that he's an elite shooter, or, an above average shooter. Obviously, that wrist shot is unbelievable, the one he scored in Calgary. But he's been on a heater since this road trip. I don't know if he's going to want to get back on the plane to come to Toronto. He's been lighting up the West Coast. So I think he's an easy pick. And, no matter who you play him with in the lineup, he's got a good chance to score pretty much, in a good chunk of the games. I won't say every night because it's putting a lot of expectation on him, but you like him to get on the scoreboard more times than not.
You definitely do. I think, again, he continues to show his value, even though, and the thing when I said in the last podcast is, this is not a guy getting prime time minutes. He scored on the second power play, would not have seen time if that was a normal 2-minute minor. It was a 4-minute minor, so they literally had to put them out on the ice there. And I think he's been pretty. I think he's been pretty solid with the limited opportunities he's had. 4 goals in his last 5 games, 3 straight on this road trip. Yeah, I think he's probably one of the guys that definitely would like to continue playing on these road trips here, because he's enjoying some good success there. And yeah, it's kind of weird because the Leafs are trying to find the right forward combinations. And I don't know, for him, it's fine for him to be on the third line, but maybe he deserves more than third line at this rate. But the problem is, who are you moving down, right? And that's kind of always been the conundrum for the Leafs, is they have so many options right now in terms of the top 6 that the thing is like, okay, you're moving some from the top 6 down. Should this guy even, like, can you really put this guy in the bottom 6? That's the thing, right? Bob McMann, his game at least is tailored to playing a bottom 6 role, rather than some other guys you would have to move down from the top 6 to the bottom 6 to make him fit there.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a jumble in the lineup right now, because Marner's obviously playing on a different line with Willie and JT. Domi's playing up on the first line. He's had a bit of a track record with Matthews going back to last year in the playoffs of being productive. Maybe you try McMahon. Like, I think every time I'm on here, we say, like, this is the middle portion of the season. This is the time to throw stuff at the wall and see what works. Maybe you try McMahon with Matthews and Nyes, Matthews and Domi, see what happens. Like, I do like him as just a complimentary scorer, but you do need to have him with a guy that can set him up. I think, he and Willie have proven that they've been really good together. It's just finding the pieces in that lineup. And obviously this lineup's far from complete as we head towards the deadline, but I think wherever you play him in the lineup, he's going to be a good complement piece, and he's going to give you that secondary scoring that the Leafs have been, craving for how many years now? 5, probably.
Well, that's it, right? Finding that depth scoring has been a challenge. So, good on Bobby McMann for continuing to do it. Who do you have as a third star?
Oh, goodness. I honestly really liked the game of Jake McCabe and Chris Tanev. I know that's a bit of a tandem, but I think just that pair together have been, I obviously don't have any, metrics in front of me, but they have to be one of the best shutdown pairings in the league at this point. Like, just nasty in front. Tanev's blocking shots left and right. McCabe's just annihilating guys. We saw that in Calgary. He's just, they're so fun to watch. I don't, their impact on the game goes much further than the scoreboard, in my opinion, where it's just, they are an incredible deterrent to opposing forwards where you don't have any worries about them when they're on the ice. I think that's something the Leafs have been looking for on the back end for years, is just a consistent pair that you can just put out there and know they're going to give you, a good 45-second minute long shift every single time they're out there.
Well, that's it, right? They've always kind of been they've been the dependable unit. I think last night, again, they weren't on ice. They were not on the ice for a goal against, which that's a positive there. But I did feel that maybe at times they were caught. They were caught a little bit defensively in terms of giving up chances. But again, you're going to give up chances. Are they going against you? And I don't think that didn't really happen at 5-on-5. They weren't on the ice for 5-on-5 goal against, and they had a positive expected goal differential. So, so I don't think I don't think they had a bad game. I'll just give for my third star. I'm just going to give a shout out to Philip Myers, who scored for the first time since November 2022. Usually, it's somebody doing that to the Leafs. Yeah. And the Leafs got the reverse out of that from Myers, who it's interesting because they were talking about this on the broadcast, whether or not Myers is a guy that would, if people get healthier, is he gonna get placed on waivers? He would get claimed 1,000% off waivers, no doubt about it. It makes me also wonder I don't think he's an offensive stalwart. I think it was he did the right thing, shot on net, deflected in. But at the same time, I don't know if I'd be putting this guy on waivers just yet, especially as a right shot defenseman. The Leafs have right shot D-man, but I don't know. I feel like I would get more out of Myers than I would out of a Connor Timmins right now. He's got a better feel for his first off, his defensive game is a lot more steady, in my opinion. He's a lot more physical than Connor Timmins. Timmins tends to take really stupid penalties. He's supposed to be a guy that brings offense, Connor Timmins, and he hasn't done that really that much. Yeah, I get it. He's not getting power play time, but you got to find a way to be a contributor in some way, shape, or form. And I haven't really seen that from Connor Timmins, this year yet. So, yeah, I think Philip Myers, and he's got a good contract. I think he's signed until next year, right, at $850,000. It's pretty good for a depth right shot defenseman. So a good night for him.
Yeah, it sounds like an indictment on a defenseman, and you say he is what he is, but he's steady on the defensive end. He's meat and potatoes. He's not trying to do too much with the puck. The funny thing about I forget who it was that somebody got upset with him last night because he just rifled a puck and it went like a full Cody Ceci, like 15 feet wide of the net, and it hit a Seattle Kraken player, and he was yelling at him on the way off. He just, as soon as he gets the puck, it's on net. It's the funniest thing ever. It's like just a half clapper or a full wind up. Like there's no, hey, I'm going to try and, toe the line and do some stuff there. It's no, puck on net. It's kind of like Benoit, right? Where it's just make the simple play and it'll usually go well for you.
Yeah. Sometimes the simple play is the right play. And we saw a lot of that last night, a lot of simplicity, nothing too outrageous, and it kind of worked for the Leafs. All right, let's put a bow on that game. We will bring up the Leafs' next challenge. That is the Vancouver Canucks. Let's see how the Leafs do in unfortunately, a place where they haven't really had a lot of success. We'll discuss that. And we got more trade talk about another potential option for the Leafs to consider. Whether this one is an actual fit, we don't know. We'll discuss that next year on the Locked On Leafs podcast. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues here. David Morassutti with my buddy Austin Owens. And yeah, so we turned the chapter on Seattle. It's an interesting travel plan that the Leafs had here. Edmonton, Calgary. That's usually, sometimes it's the other way around. It's like Calgary then Edmonton.
Yeah.
they just decided Edmonton first with the Saturday night. How you're not getting the Leafs and Oilers on a Saturday night. Then you go from Calgary, you go to Seattle. So you go kind of, we're going to go down south. We're still going west, but we're going to go south a bit. Then we're traveling back up to Vancouver.
You got to clear customs twice. That's a weird. Like I figured they would go Vancouver, then make the jump to the States, then come home, but probably the dates didn't line up.
I also think you'd rather have a Saturday matchup between the Leafs and Canucks than the Leafs and Kraken.
Yeah,
it's going to be a better audience for TV. Hockey Night in Canada. Unfortunately for the Leafs, it is against the Canucks, who, you think, the Leafs would kind of enjoy a chance to go up against Vancouver. Not necessarily, except for when the Canadian division, in the last 2 years ago when they were in the Canadian division, but the Leafs have struggled mightily in Vancouver. Would you like to know their record, Austin, in their last 20 games against the Canucks on the road? How many wins do you think they have in their last 20 games in Vancouver?
Oh boy, is it even remotely near 500?
No.
I'm going to go with 6.
3. The Leafs are 3-14-3 in their last 20 games against the Canucks on the road. The goal differential, they have... this is not good. 44 goals scored, 71 goals against. That is putrid. It sucks. So it's not been it's one of those places I don't get it. The Leafs I've always struggled. And I remember the last time the Leafs played in Vancouver, they lost that game, I believe. I think they won the last game in Vancouver, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
No, wait. No, I'm wrong. They lost that last game. The Leafs haven't won a game in Vancouver since 2019.
Yikes. There was a whole ass pandemic between that.
4-1. It was a 4-1 win. I want to actually see who was playing in that game. Austin Matthews obviously scored in that game. Who was
hit me with an absolute out of left field guy was Tyler Ennis still on the team at that point?
Okay, so Frederick Anderson was the goalie of record in that game. He made 38 saves.
Was Ron Hainsey still a Maple Leaf at that point?
No Ron Hainsey.
Oh.
John Tavares had a big game, 2 goals and an assist in that one. Mitch Marner had a pair of points.
I just need an out of left field Maple Leaf guy that I wouldn't remember from pre-COVID.
Pontus Aberg was on this team at that
That'll
point.
do it.
Tyson Berry was on the team. Cody Ceci. Yeah, Justin Hall, Kapanen, Kerfoot. You had the normal hitters. Nick Petan was also a member of that.
There it is.
See, they got rid of Nick Petan and Pontus Ahlberg, and they were never going to win against the Canucks.
Noted Mike Babcock favorite, Nick Petan.
Yeah, so the Leafs have really struggled against in Vancouver recently. It's not been good. And I do want to correct myself. They did beat the Canucks in 2023.
What part of the year was this game? The 2019 one?
The 2019 one. Let's see here if I go back. Let's see, 2019. I've just got to go back to my notes here.
That's okay.
But yeah, the Leafs have just not been very good against the Canucks recently.
Was Mike Babcock still the head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs when they last won? Is what I was getting at.
Good.
He was fired in November of 2019.
Let's see here.
Sorry, I'm making you do a lot of work on something that's really random and ridiculous.
I don't think I want to say. So that the last game that they won that I said was in 2019. It was in December. So
just
no. So it would have been Sheldon Keefe because I think Babcock was fired in November.
Honeymoon stage of Sheldon Keefe.
Right. You're not wrong on that.
Still a whole 3 weeks or less on the job. Sheldon Keefe was in charge of the Leafs when they last won in Vancouver. That's a long-winded way to get to my point, which was. It's been a minute. Well, 2023, you said, so not that long.
No, but it's I thought they were better against Vancouver during the COVID years, but I also remember there was that ridiculous game where the whole team had COVID, had just come back, and the Leafs lost.
That might be because of the Canadian division, but I feel like Edmonton and Calgary, the Leafs have a really good track record against on the road. Like we usually pick up wins there, and then Vancouver's always a very odd matchup. Like there's just voodoo or whatever you think. It's just something, a bunch of weird bounces or something usually goes wrong, and the Leafs usually drop that one.
Yeah, so this is the first game the Leafs will play against the Canucks since they made the JT Miller trade. Since they made that JT Miller trade, it's been kind of up and down for Vancouver, but they did win their last two games, one against San Jose and Colorado, which they shut out. That was the Thatcher Demko game. He was ridiculous in that one. No. We all remember the last time the Leafs played the Canucks. It was a 3-0 loss. One potential thing that might change this for the Leafs and might put them in their favor is the status of Quinn Hughes. He has been skating but has not played, and it's made people wonder if he's even going to play in the Four Nations. We don't really know what the injury is. It's a kind of a mystery ailment. So if the Leafs' chances get a lot better, Quinn Hughes isn't playing. But you're kind of hoping that maybe this is a Leafs with the way that their road, they've been on the road, that they're going to be able to get a better chance to win than they did in Toronto. But guess what? It's in Vancouver. So throw that thought out the head too. It's just weird that, you know, a team has had the Leafs number like that, especially on the road.
Yeah, especially with the success the Leafs have had over the years, it's tough to kind of fathom that a team has had their number that much. Obviously, Vancouver, I've been to that rink. It's a massive rink. Like, you don't really realize how many people. It sounds ridiculous, obviously, but how many people can fit in that rink? It feels like it's 20 stories tall. That barn is huge, and it's just such a cool atmosphere when the fans get behind it. It's unbelievable. So like it's hard to believe in one breath, and then it's also like, yeah, I get it when you see that playoff run last year and how the crowd gets into it. People from Vancouver are not fans of people from Toronto. Just somebody, family there. You think Montreal and, you know, other parts, Ottawa, hate Toronto. Vancouver hates Toronto the most, or very close to the top. So the fans really show up one way or the other for that, whether it's Leaf fans that are in BC that want to support their team, or fans that want to show up and hate watch the Leafs and, you know, watch them lose. It's going to be a crazy atmosphere tomorrow.
It will be a very crazy atmosphere. Now, before we head out for the day, we did have a report during the broadcast that, and it's been reported also, I think just the last little bit, that Brayden Schenn's name is being thrown potentially out there by the St. Louis Blues. He is signed to a $6.5 million deal per year until 2028. He is 33 years old. Obviously, he's played defense. He's played center, left wing. He's kind of been the Swiss Army knife a little bit there in St. Louis. St. Louis is also trying to go a bit younger here and kind of do a bit of a retool on the fly. But my question here is, and again, you hear the name Brayden Schenn. I remember when Brayden Schenn was drafted by, I think that was the LA Kings that drafted Schenn.
And it was him and Wayne Simmons came up together. They were the big duo that broke in with the Kings.
Yeah, that was the 2009 draft, and I just remember being so disappointed that the Leafs did not get Brayden Schenn in that draft.
Yeah.
It's been an interesting time for Brayden Schenn. This was also Brayden Schenn gets drafted. Everyone's like, Brayden Schenn doesn't, he gets drafted. The Leafs then go and take Nazem Kadri. That was the whole, you want Kadri? Yeah, no, we're taking him. that was a fun little Brian Burke moment there. But Brayden Schenn, it's obviously an interesting name there. He's he bounced around a bit in his career, went from LA, then he went to Philly, and then he somehow ends up in St. Louis, where his first year there, remember, it was like his best year, 70 points, but he's in like that 58 to 65 range in terms of points. Right now, he's got 30 points in 55 games this year. The plus minus have not been very kind to him. Obviously, there's some people bringing up the fact that Craig Berube coached them, and maybe that's that's what makes the fit potentially work with the Leafs. But to me, I have two issues, and I'm sure you have the same issues. One, the cost, because apparently St. Louis wants a mammoth return for a 33-year-old player with a pretty sizable contract left, and his best days are certainly behind him. And two, the fit. Just if you're, why would you go out and get a 33-year-old center when people are when there's probably, and he's using assets to get a 33-year-old center when there's probably other better options for the Leafs out there.
Yeah, I think the main thing that's kind of throws it into a bit of a weird situation is you're already dealing with, John Tavares is into his mid-30s. He's a center that needs a new deal. What that deal is going to fall at, obviously, people have speculated on, but it's usually in, anywhere from on the low end, like $5 million to like $7 million is what most people think. Tell me if I'm wrong, Dave, but Brayden Schenn, 33 years old. He's got, I think, 30 points on the year right now. I just don't really see the fit. I understand that he's a good center, obviously proven track record, Stanley Cup champion. His resume speaks for itself, and the connection to Berube makes a lot of sense, but taking on a $6.5 million center as a third line guy doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Like, especially, I think the name that's kind of perked everybody up over the last week is Dylan Cousins being moved from the Buffalo Sabres, who have a proven track record of trading away centers too early and regretting it in the end. But
yeah, like go get me the younger center. He's making he's making $600,000 more than Brayden Schenn.
Yeah,
I take the younger guy over the older guy. Or you know what? If the Leafs just want to go and get a veteran center, just go get and don't have the assets for a guy like Cousins.
Yeah,
then go get Brock Nelson instead.
Go get a Brock Nelson. Go get a Scott Lawton. Go get somebody that's going to be a little cheaper than And it also could be St. Louis blowing smoke. Obviously, they who doesn't want to get the top value for their captain and a guy that has gotten them so much over the years, has given back to them so much over the years on the ice, and also the impact of winning a Stanley Cup can't be discounted, obviously. But I don't see the point. I think the idea in a perfect world is that you want to get a center that is kind of around the same age or younger than your core. Ideally, this is an ideal world. Obviously, we're not talking about the NHL where anything can happen. So I think Cousins is the main target. If you go after, a lot and somebody that's closer to like 28 to 30, I think that kind of fits the window a little better of what the Leafs are doing. But I don't know if Brayden Schenn makes a whole ton of sense if the Blues are staying true to their word and, I'd imagine a monumental return is a couple of picks and a top prospect, something along those lines, where it's like, I don't know if you want to give that up in the Leafs system not being as good, and it just doesn't make a whole ton of sense. But, I could see it happening. As I said to you in another chat, like, this seems like a move that Brad Treliving would make when he was with the Flames, like just getting a splash piece. A name like Brayden Schenn is obviously big for a brand like the Leafs. Yeah. But I don't know what to really think of it at the moment, where I wouldn't be upset about it, but it would be what the return would be.
Yeah, and look, like the Leafs don't have picks really to give up. They would have to likely give up prospects and players, right? Like, I'm assuming any deal like that, Fraser Minton or Easton Cowan are right there in the center of the package.
Or Ben that's
St. Louis is looking for players mostly. Like, you've seen the deals that they've made. They're not always going for picks. They're going, they want to still be somewhat competitive.
Yeah,
they don't want to do full scale tear it down. That's not what St. Louis is about.
They're not in the business of bottoming out in St. Louis. They never have been.
And a lot of teams are kind of like that, but I do think that if you're the Leafs, you're better off going to get someone who's a little more affordable price wise than going and getting a player who just doesn't fit. I just don't think. Again, the Leafs are an older roster right now. go and get someone younger and go get someone maybe that doesn't have the term that a Brayden Schenn has.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting because I think he's in year 5 of an 8-year deal. Obviously the cap's going up, so a $6.5 million player isn't going to have the same impact on your cap situation towards the end of that deal that he would, a couple of years ago when COVID froze everything. But at the same time, that's a contract you're not going to be able to move off of generally, given the age, or you're not going to get the same value back. If they're asking for what it sounds like they're asking for, you're going to have to pay or buy high on Brayden Schenn, and generally, unless he breaks the norm of what his career mark has been for points, you're probably selling lower than that on Brayden.
Hey, you want to go out and get a Schenn, even an older one, go get me Luke. That's the one I'm not paying masses for Luke Schenn, but I'd rather take the swing at a Luke Schenn than going out and get Brayden. And look, let's say Brayden's a bad player. I just think that I think his best years are a bit behind him in terms of what he's being paid and his role.
I think and I also think Luke Schenn obviously is older and also cheaper and fills kind of the need that the Leafs are looking for, which is either a bottom pair, or if you want to play him with Riley again, like he proved in that playoff series against Tampa, that he's just a guy you want in your lineup, a guy you hate to play against in the playoffs, because he'll lay the lumber, he'll lay the body, he'll do whatever you need, he'll clear the front of the net. He's just a physical player, and he's also on a team in Nashville that has really underachieved and probably isn't going to be looking for a massive return for a guy like that. They're going to be looking to give him to a contender and give him a shot.
Exactly. Well, we'll see how this all plays out. It wouldn't surprise me potentially a move like Brayden Schenn happens, but I just don't see the Leafs being that team unless St. Louis brings down what could be their asking price. And obviously Brayden Schenn has a no movement clause or no trade clause, or he has trade protection, so he'll have a bit of say there. So we'll see how that all plays out. I want to thank you all for listening and for supporting the show. You can go and subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. Make sure you also tell all your friends to subscribe on our page on YouTube. We're trying to bring those numbers up, obviously. And on the next episode, obviously, we'll discuss the Leafs, how they did in Vancouver, and we got 4 nations. We will be shifting gears from Leafs to Team Canada. Can't wait. We'll discuss that next year on the Locked On Leafs podcast. So make sure you keep yourself locked in here on Locked On Leafs.